Hi, Josh, and welcome to ABA in Focus. I'm looking forward to talk about Convertx and how it all started. Last time we chatted, you gave me like a small summary of how you came about to be in the business of supporting startups. So if you can just give me a small recap about that.
For sure, definitely. Well, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, definitely. So a little bit about Convertx. Convertx was founded about 3 years ago, more or less to provide as a support ecosystem for, I guess, growing or brand new startups globally, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in the GCC region, whether it's in North America or even Europe. And really kind of, we're really at the epicenter when it comes to growing startups, and we've grown over 400 at this point. We've seen unbelievable success stories, and it's a pretty cool kind of growth pattern that we've been seeing over the years of kind of new founders creating startups, especially during COVID.
Yeah. Okay. And how did you come about to being in the Middle East?
For sure. So, it's actually quite an interesting story. But when COVID hit, back home, Canada went into lockdown. I was based in Toronto. I was scratching my head trying to figure out what I was going to do, because like everybody else, I was going crazy during lockdown. It's very hard to be isolated for that kind of period of time. For most people, it's not easy, especially for someone that is used to interacting with a lot of other individuals in a company format or corporate format. So basically scoured and said, okay, where in the world right now is there no lockdown, that COVID rates are low and it's safe? The UAE, specifically Dubai, was that place, and we were welcomed with golden visas, vaccines on arrival.
Wow.
I've never seen treatment like this anywhere else in the world, and it's amazing the country that they built here.
And when was that?
This was in Dubai, so we arrived, I think, about 2 years ago, around October-ish.
Okay. And so you've had like around 2 years experience in the region. What do you see as like some trends or patterns when it comes to entrepreneurs and the startup ecosystem? What are the opportunities, if you want to call them that, but also like what are challenges that founders have told you they're facing and have sought your help for?
For sure, and thank you for that question, because it's a very interesting situation here in the Middle East, specifically the GCC as a whole. Something that is almost non-existent in North America. And the reason I say this is because in places like North America, there's already so much competition for almost every single industry, for almost every single segment, for every parallel. There's someone trying to build something better and better than the last. Whereas when you come to the GCC, such a nascent environment for fast-growing startups, you come to realize there isn't much competition here. There isn't much there are a reasonable amount of startups, but nowhere near as many as North America, nowhere near as many as Europe. With that being said, it's an incredible opportunity for founders. It's an incredible opportunity to grow in that industry itself and evolve and take over an industry, because when there's a lot less competition, it means the success or the ability to succeed is not only easier, but the ability of success is much higher as well. So I've been seeing that a lot with founders in this region. They've seen incredible or significant growth and contented growth, if that makes sense. So that's quite one of the most unique parts to this region itself.
Okay. And like what industries are those startups that approach you or you could have most usually in? Like we've heard like there's fintech, but like do you see other sectors that are growing?
I mean, from my perspective, you have a lot of ML, machine learning, like AI, that kind of fun stuff, artificial intelligence. That's the new biggest thing from what it's starting to seem. Even with crypto taking its downturn in the recent months, the crypto markets from software or SaaS development perspective is growing enormously, where people are building Web3 apps. It's the new biggest talk, NFTs, Web3, all this kind of crazy stuff. But I would say the most interesting, and this is something to me where I was like, wow, is actually femtech, right? So basically female founders that are trying to change a specific space that people never really cared for before. So that could be a great example of this, could be babysitting apps. A great example of this could be things that would be specifically geared towards females, if that makes sense, or female-based apps. Because there's a lot of kind of generalized apps but there's nothing really that's ever been geared towards that. So a lot of female founders have been coming to us more than ever before. And it's actually pretty impressive to see that a lot of female individuals are actually trying to create businesses. And it's amazing, amazing to see. And I'd like to say, actually, we have more female founders now than we actually do have males. So it's showing to be incredible to actually see that kind of facet.
Yeah, and how do you think like the UAE supports or fosters this ecosystem for women, but also like in general for startups?
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of different kind of facilities or facets that provide startup support in the Middle East itself. It's really incredible to see in the short period of time how much actual support has been put together to help create these companies. So that's something that's been quite remarkable to me. The challenges still remain with registering a company and getting a company off the ground, bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. I think it will forever be a challenge in this country because the corporate environment and the corporate structure. But one thing that's been amazing to see is you have these banks like Live, you have these banks like Rock, you have these banks like Fab that are going out there and making your life much, much easier than it once was. So it's being fixed. It's on the way to being fixed, but it's still very challenging because this environment is still so new. It's a very new country. We just passed our 50th anniversary, which is unbelievably exciting. So for a 50-year-old country, it's spectacular. But hopefully that makes sense.
It does, fair enough. And within that context, what advice would you give to young startup founders who are looking to start up a business here?
For sure. So the biggest thing I've seen, or the biggest recommendation I've always given to any kind of founder of any sort, is find a niche, find something that is untapped, at least in your region. Initially don't fully think on a global level, the future purpose of going global. But initially look at your individual market. Great example is Kareem. There was no ride sharing apps before this, but they built something like what was already existing in the US. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It doesn't have to be new, but it has to be, I always say, about a 90-degree flip of what already is existing on the market. And with that being said, if you're able to do something like that, then you can see explosive growth. Following that, put your head down and work. And most people struggle with this. Most people don't understand this. You kind of have to give up your social life. You have to give up what most people kind of enjoy in life. And if you do that for long enough, 2, 3, 4 years, and you look back, you'll be sailing an open sea. And it's really impressive to see the growth that can happen in a few years just by putting your head down and focusing. And that's the biggest thing that I recommend any founder to do. And second to that is networking. Your network is your net worth. And that's always something I stand by.
Okay, to go back to your first point, you said that ideas don't have to be revolutionary. So you don't see it as a challenge in the region that there are like few totally innovative ideas that have come out from here? That doesn't necessarily have to be a challenge, or what's your take on that?
So the example I always look at, and it's a great question. It's a great question. So the example I always look at is if you look at the escalator, right? Everyone's been on an escalator before where it's an electric staircase. If you really compare a staircase and an electric staircase, they're the same thing, right? The only difference is one moves for you. Maybe there's more inner workings, but I call that a 90-degree tilt, if that makes sense. The same with any other startup, whether it's, you can look at, I'm not going to name drop specific companies, but there's a company that delivers gas to your car. That's remarkable. In other countries, this doesn't exist. This is a brilliant idea. They did a 90-degree tilt, put a gas station on wheels, right? If you look at Kareem, they took the taxi service, did a 90-degree tilt and said, okay, you can call it on your phone. And then you had taxi companies chasing them, trying to build an app too. So same thing with Souk, which was acquired by Amazon, right? Another great example, right? They changed the way that Amazon even did things. They allowed individuals to pay with cash. In North America, you can't pay with Amazon with cash. So 90-degree tilts, that's what I would say. That's all it takes to build a revolutionary startup, not full 180s.
Okay. For my final question, what expansion plans do you have for Convertx in the region? How do you see it growing? Or maybe out of the region?
I mean, we're a global company, right? We're in many different continents, countries. It's a massive team that's been very, very fast growing, about 100 people now. But relatively, I mean, right now we moved our headquarters here. being that this is what I believe is the future of startups, the future of tech, the future of mankind. I look at the UAE as like Mars. The barren deserts, nothing going on here, and they imported everything. It's like a Mars Project 1.0. They terraformed desert quite remarkably. So regardless of that, if they've done this in 50 years, imagine what the next 50 years will look like. And that's why, to be very honest with you, this is the headquarters of Convertx, and this is the future of Convertx at its core. If that makes
Your
sense.
global headquarters as well, like it's your
Our global headquarters, that is correct.
Okay. 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 Nice.
Okay.
And so do you see yourself expanding in the region, like in neighboring countries, or?
So right now, I think it's going to take us a little bit longer to fully gain a grasp even of the UAE. The UAE, even though it's a small country, it's a very powerful country. And the reason why I say it's powerful is because from my perspective, if you can do well in the UAE, you can do well in the rest of the GCC neighboring countries. So from my perspective, we've already started to grow in the UAE. It's been incredible growth, to be very honest with you. It's I think we're the largest now in the entirety of the GCC when it comes to startup incubators, which is pretty cool of a statement to say. But with that being said, the challenges of language still exist. Sadly, shoya, I'm still learning Arabic.
There you go. Inshallah, and
Alhamdulillah.
that's all you need.
So we're trying to bring on team resources that can help us grow more so in the region. And I think right now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our bearing and get our footing in this region. And we have an office now here, an index tower in DIFC, as well as we have team members here on the ground as well, which has taken some time to understand kind of the hiring rhythms and all that kind of stuff, and how to build a company here and how to get everything sorted and the correct and kind of reasonable manners. And following that, now we're looking to grow here significantly. So we're hiring at an incredible rate here, and that's going to continue as we expand into initially Bahrain and then following that into Oman.
Good luck with that, and looking forward to hear more from you and your growth.
It was an absolute pleasure speaking, and I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks.